All right, it looks like we are live, and as we upload, we boot up, we get fired up across the internet. Today, we're going to talk about the wicked groomers and their will to power, and how Disney executives are ensuring that this will be in their programming. Right here on All Minus One, on the other side of the intro. Welcome, everyone. This is All Minus One, and my name is Bill. Thanks for joining us. So today I had to stream a little early because I do have to go to work here later and or earlier than I often go in on Sundays if I work on a Sunday. So had to get this started early. Hey, good to see you guys here. Assalamu alaikum. Um, in any case, I did want to do some housekeeping. I usually do at the beginning of the show. Um, Guys, check me out on Entropy or Rumble right now if you'd like. We also are streaming live on DLive. You can donate over on Entropy. I think Rumble allows you to make donations as well, if I'm not mistaken. And you can also donate through PayPal if you would like. No obligations here. And with that, I I'm a little under the weather. I'm not like 100%. I feel actually pretty good, but I have some things going on with my sinuses and my throat a little bit, a little phlegmy. I didn't feel good Saturday. Didn't really have the time between work and not feeling well to stream, so I didn't. But what I think I'm going to do for the moment, given that I just see my work schedule for the week, is I'm going to try and do deep dive, in depth stuff on Sundays. I'll either do the siesta stream, which I'll title it that way, which will just be about the news, or I'll do something more specific like I'm doing today. And then later in the week, I will try and clip videos from the longer, live stream that a lot of people don't want to sit through. They don't want to sit through 2 hours of live streaming, and maybe cut down some clips or clips you can share and reference, send to friends, that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Kind of getting frustrated with not being able to sit down and write my book. So I need to make time for that. And streaming takes time, guys. It's not just the time I'm doing it now, it's all the prep and research and all that kind of stuff. And although I'm pretty good at getting it done pretty quick, it's still time consuming. So that's that for the housekeeping stuff. So thanks again for being here. Today, guys, we're going to talk about Disney and grooming and where all this is coming from. Why is this going on? Why is this infested like universally across all the big corporations? It's actually a pretty quick simple explanation, but I'm going to make it like a 2 hour long presentation. So uh maybe quick shots can come back. Yes, Spook. Actually, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about taking the same format, adding the logo I made, the new logo, and I was 100% thinking about doing that for the clips. So good call, bud. Um, it'll be one of those things I have to sit around and just come up with how I want to do it. But that's probably what I'll do. Um, and in fact, I would have put more out there. I just haven't made an updated uh like intro screen for that or logo or whatever. It's all the stuff I was using in the beginning, which is basically stuff that I appropriated. I knew I couldn't use forever, but I just I wanted to get started. So that's how things go. So guys, Disney. Now that we're 8 minutes into the show, but it's only 5 after 1 right now. That is 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm on Eastern Standard Time, US. Disney, guys. I found this tweet particularly interesting from Rod Dreyer. He says, in a car driving through Romania with Romanian friends, played this for them. Said, one, this is exactly like the self-criticism session from the communist era we grew up with. Comrades, I promise to be more faithful to the revolution. And what is this? He's talking about old Bob Chapek, the CEO of Disney. Now, this is from Christopher Rufo. I'm not going to play all of this video. I actually have some other videos that I want to play for you because I want you to see the normie perspective of this. And, I watch Friday Night Tights every Friday evening generally, or I listen to it while I'm working. Because it's entertaining, it's interesting to hear their perspectives, and I like normie perspectives because they're not always seeing the full picture, but they know that something is wrong. And I'm not dissing any of these guys or anything like that either. The cultural side of things is very important. And so they are fed up with what's going on with movies and TV and entertainment, comic books, and how wokeness has infiltrated every aspect of our lives. And again, there's a reason for that, and I'm going to show you. And it's goes a lot of this follows back to what I covered last week with the groomers and talking about how like someone like Carol Quigley writes about how these things are circles within circles within circles of control. And again, I'm not going to showbiz myself, so we'll wait till we get there. But let's play this clip and we'll see what you guys think.
Is it for the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world to basically get down on all fours and spread his ass cheeks to be fucked by the LGBT community, like his employees?
That was one of the most pathetic and weak responses I've seen from any person in a powerful position. Like, that was pathetic. And it did.
That was not powerful position.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah, you could tell he was scared to death when he
was like, talking. "Oh, where should we do this? Let's not record it in my great office. Let's record it in a hallway with the turning red poster behind. So you know they know that I'm an ally. I'm an ally. You know, you got to really set it up."
Okay, and for one, dude, when you're recording something, get fully into the screen. Don't be like, "Guys, I just want to apologize for being. I'm a big
wanted people to see the poster in the back. Probably.
And all you could see was turning red. You couldn't even see the entire poster.
Yeah.
I think maybe an intern just pulled out their MacBook Pro, turned on the webcam, and said, "Fire off, sir."
Yep.
Right now.
And it was pre-written. It was scripted. It was very obvious to tell, not only from his eyes, but the fucking pauses between sentences.
I don't look scared, do I, Corey? No, Mr. Iger. Or Chapik, whoever you are.
He's like, "I told you, stop calling me Iger." He's gone.
He's gone. I'm the big Bob now. I'm the number one Bob. Bob Chapik.
I'm not Bob number 2.
I don't look like a burn victim.
Think of how quickly it turned. It was a month and a day ago, I believe, is when the articles came out, when that memo came out of Bob Chapek saying, "We support inclusivity, but we don't want to be used as a political football. We're not going to make any statements on this bill."
Okay, so this is important. I want you to keep note of this because we're going to listen to two little. This one's a little bit longer. It's about 5 minutes total, but we're going to listen to two little segments from Friday Night Tights. This is, of course, them talking about this. It looks very strange and disingenuous. Again, you guys can go on Christopher Rufo's Twitter if you want and watch the video. I'm not necessarily going to play it here. A portion of it will play here, I believe, in a bit. But listen to them trying to suss this out, trying to figure out what is going on and why they flip on a dime all the time, why they're disingenuous, and then all of a sudden come back around and change their mind about these things. And again, I'm going to explain this to you. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we will get there.
How quickly that changed. Now you have Disney tweeting out statements about that they're going to do everything in their power to reverse this law, whether it be at the court system or at the legislative system. Like, you're a company. What are you talking about overturning laws for, Disney?
You pronounce kids media and sell hot
kids
dogs
about sex, Disney. Why? Why do you want to talk to 5 to 8-year-olds about sex, sexuality? What? I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
What do you think these marching orders are coming from?
The LGBTQIA plus advisory council.
That is a normie perspective. This is not coming from the LGBT community. The LGBT community is being used as a weapon, as a tool to atomize society, just like postmodernism has been, just like feminism has been, just like transgenderism is now. And the LGBT community doesn't quite align with the trans folks. Jokes that got Dave Chappelle in trouble, right? Long before he started talking about his friend who committed suicide. So keep these things in mind.
Yeah, I think it's the employees. Fucking their employees, these executives. When you hire mentally ill people who don't give a fuck about the stories they're telling, who don't give a fuck about the lore or anything like that, they only care about inserting their agenda. You shouldn't be surprised when they just hire more people.
Okay, and Gundam. By the way, I am like sub to all these people's channels. I don't really watch Garrett very often. I like Gary Neurotic, Geeks and Gamers, D-Day Cobra. I catch his stuff now and again. Heels and Babyface as love his stuff. I watch It's a Gundam quite a bit. So And Friday Night Heights is a fun show. So every now and again you gotta kick back, get away from just pure politics or pure cultural stuff, and kind of have fun, enjoy, listen to some jokes. The same reason why we do the ends justify the memes. Are they deliberately making it possible to focus? Nah, they do pretty good. Spook says, I don't know anyone here. Yeah, well, you check out their channels. Most of them are rather large. They're not in the millions per se, but who is, other than people who make, PewDiePie and people who make who are already famous or make entertainment content. Guys like Mr. Beast who give away millions of dollars. We'll talk about Mr. Beast here in a little bit.
That are aligned specifically with them, regardless of if they're qualified or not. But also that's all they'll care about going forward. They will fucking destroy your company.
But the weird thing for me is, why are they being so disingenuous about this bill? Why are they lying?
Right.
Why do we think that?
Because they can't
It says sexuality. It doesn't specify which sexuality.
Why do you guys think Disney would be afraid of their employees? If employees had that sort of power, Amazon workers would have got a vacation by now.
Yeah, just shut the fuck up
Or
and
a
give me a hot
bathroom
dog.
break.
Social power. They have social power over them because they
Imagine-
say that they're
yeah.
LGBT.
It's Hollywood.
That gives them
They don't
Because
have
they
to
use
overpower.
discrimination if
Over
they were to be
them.
fired. Yeah.
Well, again, it goes back to we've heard Kamala Harris talking to people like they're children. We've heard Bob Chapek now in this, and that's what the world is starting to be. Is it's starting to be just like, imagine if you've ever been in a room where you're telling children a story or something, like a classroom or something, and the teacher has to fit the entire scenario to the belief of the children, talk down to them, make sure they understand exactly what you're saying. And that's how the world is starting to act now, because they're bringing all of these activists into these companies, and they're basically going like, well, we know what the reality is, but we're not going to acknowledge that reality. We're going to acknowledge the fake reality that these weirdos have created so that we can project it onto everything else. That's essentially what's going on here. And it's terrifying.
So you're telling me we have to take the company back? I mean, country.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, we need our own pride parade.
To both. Yeah.
Same
Straight
pride.
We need common sense pride.
Right. So the point that he's making there is that they're hiring these people. They do have control, blah, 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 blah. They're projecting it. No, that's not the problem. Now, they are allowing these people in. There is a high amount of gay employment at Disney, but that's not what the issue is. It is something deeper and more sinister, and it is not Disney making these decisions. And I will show you more video. We're going to keep talking about Disney because they're a very influential company. They're very powerful. They run not just Disney, but they run ABC and ESPN and all manner of another dozen companies or whatever that are out there. They have a lot of influence because they're a giant corporate conglomerate. Now, as far as what Chapek says, well, he says a little bit here, but again, what I want you to get is the idea is this: there's a lot of confusion by the average folk out there of what is going on and how it appears on the surface. And some of the things that these folks just said may be true, but what's really true is that none of this is truly genuine. That's what you need to understand. It is wholly synthetic. It is wholly fake. And here is an example. This is about a minute-long clip, so it's pretty brief.
Thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
I really appreciate you taking time out of your day for this very important session. By now, I hope you've already.
By the way, I don't know how you guys don't know who Quarter Black Garrett is. He was Crowder's producer for like the last 2, 3, 4 years or something, and however long it's been. He's the guy who's going to speak here in a minute. He's at the very bottom. And if you don't know who Louder with Crowder is, I don't know how you don't know who that is either. He's like one of the biggest political YouTubers out there. He does have millions of subs. So, yeah.
Read my most recent note in which I pledged to be a better ally for the LGBTQ plus community.
A better hostage.
Hold on.
A better hostage.
Pause.
A better
Pause.
hostage.
Pause.
Okay.
I've never met a
Anyone-
deaf gay person.
Anyone that this is directed at, if you don't feel completely disrespected in every way possible, you're part of the problem. Because How the fuck can you not feel like this is such a slap in the face, talking down to you like you are a complete fucking idiot? And the fact that there's so many people out there, they think that this actually means anything other than they think you are stupid as fuck, and they're treating you like you are. And yeah, the majority of them are, but this is pathetic.
He is.
So that's Jeremy speaking. He was saying earlier that, you know, that they're talking to you like children. This is all true. They are. But this is because, again, think deeper, folks. The psychology of these people, they're not adults. They're not mature. They are children. There's more to it than that, though. There's a lot more to it. And again, it goes back to living in the synthetic world.
He's tailoring it to his audience, to be fair. So.
Yeah.
And this is all it's all word salad. It's to satisfy this. They don't give a shit about you. They do not care about you. It's just to get you off their back for a little while. They did the same thing during Georgia, whenever they had the Georgia bill about not murdering little babies as they come out the womb. They did, oh, we're not going to deal with Georgia anymore, and we're not going to film there, and it's disgusting. And then cut to 6 months, a year later, they're doing an entire behind the scenes about one of the shows that they shot there, saying Georgia's so great. I love shooting here. Everybody is amazing. They don't give a shit about the things that they say they give a shit about. It's all fake.
To ensuring that our company lives.
It is all fake. And it's all about the virtue signal. It's all about the virtue signal, though, for a reason. There's a monetary figure attached to that virtue signal. Now, we all know the phrases "go woke," get broke, right? We know that that's out there, and in part, it's true. But it's not true if the money comes from the powers that be, right? If they're going to support you no matter what. If the government will bail you out when your company fails, much like the auto industry back in 2008, 2009 in the United States. That bailout should never have happened. But regardless of the many decades that they made horrible vehicles, because we were in a financial crisis at the time, the federal government said, "Oh, you know what? We'll bail you out." And frankly, I think it would have been better if they went under and someone would have come in. Maybe you would have had someone like Elon Musk completely innovate the car industry, right? No, he had to go make his own car. We'll talk about Elon Musk and and virtue signaling here in a bit as well. So Bob Iger basically talks about, how they're going to fix things, whatever. You can go look at Christopher Rufo's Twitter. And here we have, again, Carrie Burke, the mother of two genderqueer children, says the company has been targeting Gen Z and millennials with inclusive content. Her son told her that Gen Z is 30 to 40% queer and that Disney better get with it. So I'm going to play that, not through Twitter, just so you can hear the audio on that rather well.
And I was at Freeform. It was very much in the brand ethos of Freeform to be the tip of the spear when it comes to inclusion. And we, like you, Latoya, I mean, we jumped up and down. We celebrated that. Nobody stopped us. And it felt great. And in part, I think nobody stopped us because we were, we were targeting Gen Z and millennials. We were targeting a younger, I think more open-minded. And now we know, as my son texted me this morning, Gen Z is 30 to 40% queer than the other generation's mom. So Disney better get with it.
And of course, you're going to wonder why and how that this particular lady has two children who are, of a different sexual proclivity than heterosexual, right? Because that's not the norm. And I generally take it. I'm not trying to diss anybody that might be gay out there, but I generally do take it that you will have relationship problems with your family, with your parents, if you grow up to be a homosexual. I mean, that generally seems to be true. It might not always be true, but it's true quite often. And this is part of the problem with the grooming, right? This is what makes them so wicked. They're going after children. They're manipulating them psychologically and damaging them, and they will never, ever have they'll never have a chance to have a truly like decent, fully committed, loving relationship, because from the very beginning, this dysfunction has been put upon them. It's all they know. Dysfunction will become normal for them. And actual love, actual care will become, radical. This is pretty well known in psychology. We know that this occurs in all kinds of ways when you traumatize children. And here we have another one from Christopher Rufo with the Disney executive producer, Leota Ravenew. I don't know how to say that because I don't do the French thing, but I think that's correct. Says she identifies as a bi-romantic asexual and that she wants to use her content at Disney to educate children about the pockets of the LGBT community and that you don't see, such as the asexual community. So she wants to educate kids about the people who basically have no sex drive. Why do kids need to know these things? Of course, they don't. They don't need to know these things. Kids don't care about these things. And another one is this guy right here. Disney has adopted a benefits program to assist employees and their minor children with gender affirmation procedures. These type of treatments typically include puberty blockers, breast removal, and genital surgeries for kids who are transitioning. Now, these things are permanent, more or less. Now, you might say, well, the hormone blockers aren't permanent. No, but they will sterilize you if you don't go through puberty properly. Plastic surgery, if you're a young woman developing and you have your breasts cut off, they're not growing back. This is absolutely sick and crazy, and every single person who subjects their child to this is absolutely a wicked, evil person. I don't care if they're intentionally wicked or not. I don't care if they're such a great person in any other aspect of their life. These children are not mentally developed to make these kinds of decisions. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry I have to pause myself there because it's just thinking about it. It's just absolutely crazy, absolutely insane. So the collection of sexual identities in the Disney videos is remarkable. A bi-romantic asexual, a black queer, and trans, they, them, a mother of one transgender child and one pansexual child. It's almost as if there's a way to gain status in elite institutions. And yes, and that mother's probably very popular in her Hollywood circles with her trans kid as her fashion statement, right? And her pansexual kid. And of course, Andy No replied, victimhood is currency for the powerful in the U.S. And Libby Imans, who is a journalist, but is often on Timcast, puts here, it was a wild transformation there. The overeducated elite are now able to claim to be victims while criticizing the middle and working classes for oppressing them. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that what's going on? Doesn't it seem like that's what's going on? Aren't those folks being a little oppressed, right? Quite evil. There's a high amount of environmental factors for sure. We don't know everything. Even having microplastics in the blood from the mother. Yeah, sure. There are some suggestions. There are brain scans that gay people have a little bit different brains and stuff like that, but there's not a lot of studies on it. And anytime we get into that territory, you start getting into this idea of biological essentialism, which It isn't. It's just saying that the biology plays a very important role, right? Environment also plays an important role, but it's because of genetic expression in your biology. See, when you have, interactions, everything you do every day, people you talk to, there are biological, physical reactions in your body that respond to the interactions you have, to the stressors, to the non-stressors, whatever. The removal of stress, I should say. You're having a conversation with a person, your body is reacting to that on a psychophysiological level, meaning that your mind's going through processes as well as your body. Everything is connected back to the body. This is, again, in Christianity, part of the idea of the resurrection of Christ and the resurrection of the body. We don't die and go to heaven. You are resurrected, given a new body, a new form, or your body is transfigured to be perfect, something of that sort, right? You cannot separate the body and the soul, which you could do in Greek philosophy, and that's the problem with the church, is the church went totally Greek. It got away from its roots. But that's a whole nother topic. In any case, I'm going to play this video. Again, it's about a 5-minute long video. I'll stop it here and there. But from Man in America about Disney and its history and how it has a long history of grooming. And I'll show you some other stuff about that after it's over.
Come into the limelight. What have they been talked about in the news? Okay, well, here we go. This was the Disney reveals that former vice president was responsible for hidden sexual innuendos in films. I'm not going to dig into this in this show, but if you look, there are so many instances of really, really disgusting and sexual references and even imagery being put into Disney films. So I'm not even going to dig into the details because it's almost too much to even look at. Okay, so here, August 4th, 2021, 3 Disney World employees are among 17 arrested in Florida child sexting. Okay, here we go. 4 Disney employees arrested in Florida human trafficking child predator sting. Okay, here's 2020. Disney World employees among 16 men arrested in child pornography sting. Okay, 2017. 35 Disney employees arrested on child sex charges in less than 10 years. This is a Huffington Post article. Back when the media were still reporting on these things maybe a little more fairly. So this is just a small segment of it. There's been a repeated history of people that are working at Disney being charged for child sex, pornography, molestation. Let's keep going. Okay, this is 2019. 17 people were busted in a child pornography sting in Florida. 2 of them were Disney employees. Disney Legoland employees arrested in child porn sting. Back in 2018. Disney employee, ex-police officer among 13 men accused of trying to meet children for sex. 2015. Disney World employee among 101 arrested in prostitution and child sex sting. 2016. Disney employees and first grade teacher among 9 men arrested in child porn sting. And then it continues. But so there's something else I want to show you here. I'm not sure if you've seen these symbols before. So there was an internal FBI document that was released by WikiLeaks where, so the criminals in our culture, in our society, they use symbols to communicate because symbols are very difficult to tie down and track and accuse people properly. So say someone, wrote a message to somebody saying, I want to order a young girl or whatever. It's very blatant. But instead what they do is that they broadcast their intentions using symbolism. And so this is literally from an FBI document where the FBI has identified the specific symbols that were used by pedophiles to identify their sexual preferences.
Now, most of you probably know this. You probably know, the basic symbols, what they look like. that this information was released a few years ago. This was part and parcel a big deal with the Pizzagate thing because the code words and whatever else and some of the symbols. But you are increasingly seeing this in children's entertainment, like literally. There was a whole Blue's Clues thing a few months back, which had gay pride and transgender stuff in it, and then it had like the pedophile flag, literally in it. I played it over on the Ends Justify the Memes. This is out there.
So these are the symbols. Okay, you have this triangle squiggly symbol, which means boy lover. You have the hearts inside of the hearts, which means girl lover. You have the little boy lover, which is similar to the boy lover, but it's actually a little more organic looking, like a kind of a sloppy looking spiral. And then you have the little butterflies, which is child lovers. So these are literally, I'm not kidding me, these are literally symbols that the FBI identified that pedophiles are using these consistently to communicate, okay, what their preferences are. Let's take a look at Disney.
By the way, guys, if you don't know the channel Man in America, you should check him out. He's got good stuff. Talks about similar stuff, presents it in a lot more professional way than I do, perhaps. But he's also worked in media for some odd years. So Seth, I believe, is his name. I don't recall his last name, but in any case, I tend to catch his stuff every now and again. He made a pretty big viral video the other year that Trump's shared around, so it became a big deal. But they seem to be people doing good work.
Keep these symbols in your mind. Okay, here's one of Bruno. Sorry, this is Enchanto. This is a movie that came out in the theaters. You can see these symbols; they're blatantly put into there. Here we go. This is literally the It's a Small World. This was a ride at Disney. I think this was in the Disney or in Orlando. This is part of the indoor ride where they're openly showing these symbols.
Now, I have been to Disney World, I don't know, a dozen times in my life. I've been on that ride a dozen times. The explanation was always that it was this idea, it's a small world after all, of a universal one world society. Everyone comes together. Walt Disney believed in all of that stuff. He was, for all intents and purposes, a Freemason illuminist who wanted one world society. To these people, though, it's this kumbaya beautiful thing. I don't know if that symbolism is related or if it's just something that showed up there, because that ride was put together in like the 60s or something, right? Or the 70s. I don't know if these symbols existed then. That would be something to maybe go into later, like a deep dive some other time. But what I can tell you is that as far as Disney as a whole, there are sinister things in the background of Walt Disney. He was not just some wonderful philanthropist that loved children. Dr. Seuss is another one. Look at the ideologies they're pushing, and whether they espouse communism or not, they are still espousing one world unification. And I don't agree with that. People, in fact, what I like is the idea of local sovereignty more than anything, and not having any grand overarching states over top. I think that there's less things to war and argue about when people are just focused in on creating and making their own community the best as possible. On the other hand, when you start putting an overarching government and pressing it down upon the people, well, you get a state of people who have ambition and drive, and they wish to become famous and be known in history. The great men, as we call them. Well, almost every great man that we ever talk about who was a leader in history was a mass murderer. So I don't know if they are great men in my book. But, to say that they accomplished a lot of things, sure. But again, that's the will to power, right? And what differentiates you morally from anyone else who has the will to power? Just a question to think about, right?
On display. Why else would they have that? I mean, really, Ask yourself this. Why would they have these weird triangle symbols being shown in a ride at Disney? It just doesn't make sense. But then when you say, oh my gosh, that's the exact same symbol that was the symbol for Boy Lover. And I'm not going to get into, I could do an entire episode just digging into the history of Disney as it ties into the Freemasons and club, the Club 33, Walt Disney himself. There are underground tunnels. There's so much more that you could be digging into about Disney. I'm painting the bigger picture for you. So it's a small world. Why are they displaying those symbols? Okay, here you go. Little Mermaid. More of those symbols on Little Mermaid towel. This is from one of I forget the name of this movie. This is a very popular movie that came out. There's your little boy lover symbol. There you have the symbols. Again, Alice in Wonderland Bakery coming to Disney Junior in 2022. Why do that? Like, I'll zoom in really quick here. Why put that symbol on her head? Like, if let's just say that you want to try to ignore this and say, okay, you're stretching. Well, then tell me, why would they consistently use these exact same symbols in all of their cartoons, all their characters? And why would they put that on the head of a little girl for the junior Disney? It just doesn't make sense. Like, we see the swastika, which actually, Hitler stole the swastika. Swastika is an ancient symbol. It ties back into the Native American culture, the Buddhist culture. But regardless of that, the swastika now has meaning behind it. So you have to understand that symbols carry a lot of meaning. And so if this little girl had a swastika on her bow, you would probably be outraged. You'd say, oh my goodness, like, this is terrible. They're pushing Nazi stuff. But instead, she has a symbol that is a symbol for pedophilia. Like, to me, in a lot of ways, it's almost worse than a Nazi symbol, because it's just more sinister. It sneaks into the.
And you'll notice this symbol everywhere. Spook to your thing that Dingen they're different things. Not if you go far enough back. There's the word daemon, which we now get the word for demon, but daemon used to just be any spirit, right? And Dingen is a synonymous thing. But the Dingen has the whole idea of the genie, right? The genie in the bottle from Arabian Nights and all that. So they're kind of different understandings from the East and West. But if you go back far enough in the history of it, they're the same thing. The Dingen are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, or the children of the Nephilim in the biblical account. So again, this gets into ancient metaphysics, though. A lot of people have certain understandings of what that is today. There are a lot of ancient writings, different kind of beliefs. Not everyone agreed universally on these things, but the general premise was that there were spirits who roam the earth that didn't have a body, and the reason why that they roam the earth is because, unlike man, who has a body and then goes to some intermediary place, potentially, right, the bosom of Abraham, as Christ put it. Modernly in the Catholic Church, it's purgatory, but they're kind of different conceptions. In any case, if you get into, oh man, I lost my train of thought there. If you look at what the giants that came to Earth, the angels, that is, who came to Earth and created giants with the human species, which is in accordance with the biblical text, and also in accordance with most mythologies around the world. So we know that there's an ancient root to this. Right, we know in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, that these are very similar beliefs. Abraham, before he left home, or no, not, yeah. I was saying Moses. I was about to confuse that, but no, Abraham was Chaldean, right? In many people believe he might have been a moon worshiper. We don't know really per se, but he was Chaldean originally. He was from the land of Ur and Babylon and all that. And he went westward. So these ideas, yeah, they get changed. People wrote about them. In Christianity, they change a lot a lot after the fall of Rome and as the medieval period goes on. So, and I would suspect that there probably are some things in Islam that are similar, where the history has changed some than the way people look at things and believe. That's one of the things that I really focus on, right? Is how our ideas have changed over time, but where did the original idea come from? What is the original intent and the original thought, as best as we can reconstruct it? Because all we can really do is read what people wrote about it and try to understand how they lived at the time. It's pronounced Genbil. Well, I'm not an Arab. It's pronounced Dengen over here. And Jen or Genie, yeah. I mean, it depends on what you read. I've heard it pronounced many different ways. The D silent or not. If it's pronounced Jen, then why do you have a D in it? That's all I'm saying. Anyways, let me finish the rest of this clip.
The culture. Right, here's the one of the Jungle Book. It's the exact symbol. Okay, say they're going to say, "Oh, it's a bear claw." I'm sorry, but it's the exact same symbol you see there. And again, here it is on the face of a lion creature. Okay, in one of Disney's movies. And I'm not even going to get into the whole adrenochrome thing, because that's a whole other story. But the point is that they're pushing this to our kids. And some of those movies I showed you, those are things I was watching as I was a kid. These aren't just the recent movies that came out in the past couple of years.
Right. And so, and keep this in mind too, folks, as we continue on through this little rabbit hole. Keep in mind that Disney really does not have the best reputation, now does it? This is Ghislaine Maxwell and Disney in 1985. Here, The Mirror, Happy Family Disney Day, 1985. And so, yeah, just keep those things in mind. Of course, what's the significance supposed to be? Of course, someone would say something stupid like that. And yeah, she could have worked for Disney and had nothing to do with, the child trafficking ring that they had, which I would suggest was a teen trafficking ring. And we should be more specific about these things. I'm not trying to get all like autistic or libertarian here, but we should distinguish between the difference between, grooming young children who are totally innocent and teenagers that are being manipulated. Certainly different things altogether. So, from your news, probably not NewsGuard certified or anything like that, but hey, you get the idea. Child grooming Disney linked to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. It says, this article may contain statements that reflect the opinion of the author. But, of course, we have Luke's little picture there, and it says in this report here that it revealed that Disney was sending kids to Epstein Island for snorkeling trips. For years, a Disney-owned and operated Caribbean cruise line was operating a snorkeling tour for kids to Jeffrey Epstein's renowned island. For kids age 8 and up, a day trip to Little St. James, sometimes known as Pedophile Island by locals, cost $60 to $75. Now, maybe this was just a side scheme for Epstein to make money. Maybe. You draw your own conclusions, folks. The Disney cruise did not warn parents that Epstein's renowned island is owned by a notorious billionaire pedophile, describing as sun-soaked. Rather, the literature spoke of curious fish that dart back and forth in the beautiful blue water. The Independent reports a criminal complaint from the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is attempting to seize Little St. James as government property, described it the perfect hideaway and haven for trafficking young women and underage girls for sex servitude, child abuse, and sexual assault. On the island, the complaint says Epstein and his associates could avoid detection of their illegal activity from the Virginia Isles and federal law enforcement and prevent these young women and underage girls from leaving freely and escaping the abuse. It was in the Virgins that Epstein registered as a sex offender in 2010 following his first conviction for child prostitution in 2008. He also based his shell companies in a small unmarked office in a seaside strip mall on St. Thomas, alongside Sam's Mini Mart and a salon called Happy Nails. Yeah, and boycott trending on Disney. Here's some files. Of course, you guys can look into all this. Again, a tweet from Christopher Rufo, because he's really on this stuff. In 2014, CNN did a 6-month investigation on Disney's child predators and recommended more sting operations to catch so many more sexual predators. In 2022, CNN now says that mentioning this exact problem is a conspiracy theory from a QAnon factor. Yeah. And so the story goes. Meanwhile, as they groom your kids, polls have suggested that LGBT identification is going up. So this is from Gallup. Now, I do have Axios here, and I'll show you Axios because their numbers are dreadful. But I also wonder if Axios is misrepresenting the actual numbers. This is from February 17th, 2022. Identification in the U.S. ticks up to 7.1%, and that is from 5.6% in 2020. Oh, okay. So they have the same numbers as Axios. 1 in 5 Gen Z adults identifies as LGBT. That's 20%, folks. That's not real. That's a synthetic problem, right? This is something created, and it's something created by a bunch of predators who believe that they can socially engineer society so that they can impose their utopia upon everybody, right? And in doing so, they are psychopathologizing everyone. And if you want to see more about that, I talked about that last week, or you can go check out James Lindsay's work on it, but go check out my stream from last Sunday. I actually retitled it and put a new thumbnail on there. I took away the Siesta stream title because, again, I'm probably going to take cuts from it. But, if you have the time, watch it, or hey, wait for the cuts, because I'll probably be trying to clip a few videos from it this week. But this is not organic. This is 100% synthetic. Everything that you see is synthetic. This is a false presentation for your eyes, for your ears. The food that we eat is synthetic food. It has a false taste. As Lindsay put it, it's more strawberry than strawberry, more real than real. And so in order to continue with this to the very level of the human soul, well, we have to turn all of your kids queer, trans, gay. The percentage of U.S. adults who self-identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or something other than heterosexual has increased to a new high of 7.1%, which is double the percentage from 2012, the Gallup first measured it. Yeah. And we can go through here and look at the data. What you'll notice, if you look at the years there, that trend is basically very slight, and then all of a sudden it jumps, right? It's kind of gradual, and all of a sudden it kind of gets a little steep. And of course, here are the numbers. Gen Z, so they're saying born from 97 to 2003 are 20% LGBT. with only 75.7% as heterosexual and 3.5% no response. Then you have millennials. Now, this has 81 in there. I am not a millennial, my friends. The idea of being a millennial never even occurred until recently. It was always Gen Xer while I was growing up. Assumed that we were all on the tail end of that. And it depends on what you read. But my wife and I have wonderful arguments about it. So millennials were born from 81 to 1996. No, I'd put that more like 83 to 98 or something like that, or 97. That would be, when I would throw that in there. But whatever. And they are 10.5% LGBT. Now the Gen Xers, 4.2. And the Gen Xers, you could say, I know the commies will say, oh, they were all repressed. They were all repressed at the time, whatever. No, we weren't. And I can tell you that the people who I went to school with, nobody cared about all the issues that everyone supposedly cares about today. Nobody cared. It wasn't a big deal. We get down to the baby boomers, it's 2.6. And then the traditionalist, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. I think they're talking about the silent generation. It's 0.8. So you can see this social engineering playing out here. Because what we have is a doubling effect nearly from 0.8 to 2, right? From 2 to 4, from 4 to 10, and from 10 to 20. Social engineering in its finest glory. And so we can go through all these. This is quite, again, telling. You can look at the years here. Trend in LGBT identification by generations of U.S. adults from 2012 to 2017 to 2021. Notice again that jump, that huge jump there from 2017 to 2021. And of course, these are the actual, what their orientations are. Among all U.S. adults, 1% are lesbian, 1.5% are gay, 4% are bisexual. That's a majority of, what we're looking at. And of those bisexuals, of that 4%, the majority of those bisexuals are women. Like 100%, 80% of them. Meaning something like 80% of those people or more are women. There are some bisexual men, of course. They do exist, but it is less of a thing generally. And we can go through. There's a few more charts here we can look at, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these. I just want you guys to be aware of them, where you can find it. It's Gallup. Here we have from February 19th, 2022, the number of LGBT identifying adults is soaring. And this is from Axios. This was the screenshot that I put on the It's Justify the Memes the other day. And of course, they go through the data as well. Okay, they got their data through Gallup. And I just found this interesting as a random, aside, that the LGBTQ identification is higher among Latinos than other groups. Percentage of American adults who identify as LGBT by race and ethnicity. And this is going to be really important for the future of understanding what is coming for the various communities and how they will be destroyed by the Marxism, because it has to devour itself. Excuse me, get there, guys. I had to clear my throat. I'm a little under the weather, not like super sick or anything, just a little bit, tad bit, if you didn't catch in the beginning. I'm checking the Rumble and the Entropy. Pretty clear there. All right, guys. So Non-Hispanic whites are up 6.2%. Non-Hispanic blacks, 6.6%. And this shows this like little range here of, I guess, where they were at in 2012 and where they're at now. But Hispanics have gone from 4.3%, it looks like, all the way up to 11%. So what's going on there? Well, I would suggest because Hispanics aren't even necessarily considered a separate, they're not a different race, they're considered an ethnic group within whites, that it has to do with all of, again, the propaganda, and that Hispanics being a large percentage of the American population, a growing large percentage of the American population, that they have all been highly indoctrinated. Generally speaking, though, Hispanic people are actually more conservative, but the ones who wouldn't be, would they be more susceptible to this? That's what we have to ask ourselves. 11% of Latino adults surveyed said they were members of the LGBTQ community, compared to 6.2 non-Hispanic white adults and 6.6 of Black American adults who said the same. Now, the Black American adults are primarily gay men and women. You're not going to find a lot of bisexuals in the Black community. It's not very prevalent. Gay men have a very hard time in the Black community, generally speaking. And I'm not trying to speak of Black folks as some sort of monolith. I'm just talking about as far as that, like, Black, identity community. There's people that are like, oh, I'm going to hang out with you because you're a Black guy too. It's like, I find that kind of absurd. I tend to hang out with people based on if I like them or not based on their skin tone, but whatever. But that's what I'm getting at as far as a Black community. Obviously, there's ghetto Black communities, and there are middle class and wealthy Black communities. Excuse me, guys. So didn't get time to mute that one. It says nearly 21% of all poll respondents who are Gen Z adults born between 1997 and 2012 identify as LGBT. Just over 10% from millennials, or 10% millennials do. Yeah. Again, it's just social engineering, and of course, 2021 sees record number of bills targeting trans youth. Oh no. We'll get to that here in a bit, though. I actually didn't mean to pull that one up. I meant to pull this one up. Texas teacher claims 24th graders out of her 32 students identify as LGBTQ. I wonder why. All right, I'm going to have to solve this. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to blow my nose. I'll come back to this in a second. Let's play this clip. We're going to talk about this so I can get up and do my thing.
And it's not just Disney. This is something that has spread far, far, far beyond Disney. You have companies like Oreo. They're now pushing out commercials. And I was going to show you a video of it, but I don't even want to show you that stuff. There's a commercial with Oreo about this child coming out to his grandmother and how he's coming out as, I'm not sure what he's identifying as, but you have, Hollywood, you have all these mainstream companies, these, corporations, giant corporations. I was doing a search for corporations. I was going to show you a list of corporations that have come out as being very strongly supportive of the LGBTQ plus movement. There's a list of like over 800 companies in one particular list I found. Like Adidas, a lot of the big banks, a lot of the big sporting goods stores, the alcohol, Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser. So many companies are all getting on board with this, as if similar to Ukraine, similar to COVID. These are all they're coordinated global efforts, right? You can almost call them global psyops or global psychological operations. So a psyop is it's a psychological operation. It's something that is done. It's a military level, military grade operation that's done to basically brainwash people to control the psychology of a population. And so what we're witnessing right now is we're witnessing like global psyop after psyop after psyop. That's exactly what's happening right now. So the question is like, what's behind it?
Well, I'll tell you what's behind it here in a second. I want to go backward though. I just did that. I was trying not to get ahead of myself, but I had to blow my nose. So I'm going to go backward to this article real quick. So do you think that this teacher is telling their student that just like when I was in elementary school that we had to recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle, and that we were all going to do that? And then when DARE came in and said, kids, don't do drugs, we all said, yeah, we won't do drugs. And most of us went on to high school to do drugs or whatever else in life. Do you think that these kids are just saying what the adults are saying in the room to make them, impressed with them because they trust them, because they're innocent? I mean, do you think that maybe that's the thing? There's no way that 20 of 32 fourth graders know what they're even attracted to. Most kids that age don't even like the opposite sex. Now, I liked girls at that age, but I think I'm a rarity because most of the guys I know never liked girls at that age, or even were as girl crazy as I was throughout most of my life, including in my 30s. So, I think I'm a little bit of a standout in that. But let's not continue to focus on that. You just see where the social engineering is at play. Now, this video I just played, the main thing that I wanted to focus on here, he was saying how all these other companies are involved with this, and that these companies, sorry guys, sometimes I can't do two things at once. Anyways, these companies are, it's not just Disney, it's these kind of companies that are universally going and doing this across the board. And what did we hear from Quarter Black Garrett earlier about them faking this at the moment? How it's, and I tried to explain to you this all synthetic. Well, it is. What is going on, guys, is that these companies are trying to get their social credit score in good standing. That's all that this is. And the meanwhile, and in the meantime, your children are going to be indoctrinated. But don't worry, they're going to make money. The companies, that is. That's what this is about. And so with that, I'm going to play for you this clip about ESG scores and what's really going on.
Well, you may have been hearing the term ESG lately. Last Saturday, Elon Musk tweeted, "I'm increasingly convinced that corporate ESG is the devil incarnate." People who follow the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, such as Glenn Beck, often warn against it and are even encouraging legislation to stop it from being used. But it isn't just those who are against ESG talking about it. You may have seen it in headlines on Bloomberg, MarketWatch, or Forbes. So what is it? Well, ESG stands for Environment, Social, and Corporate Governance. It's similar to a credit score, except rather than being based around a company's revenue and history of paying back debts, the ESG score is centered around sustainability and ethics. It's currently only given to corporations, but I think it's easy to imagine a future where the score is assigned to individuals as well. Now, the system was set up as a way to let investors, quote unquote, invest responsibly. Many people pride themselves on buying only sustainable products and purchasing from ethical companies. So an ESG score, which is widely used by many investment and fund management firms, makes it easy to determine which companies these are. Now, you can invest your money and feel good too. So what's the problem?
So right there, it's self-ingratiating. It is the ESG scores allow people to feel morally superior for doing absolutely nothing except for picking the business. A business, mind you, that they can't know or trust, but they will because of that arbitrary ESG score. And this is, my friends, the new social credit score. This is the pretext to where we are going with the Chinese social credit system. And if you think it will not ratchet down and become worse and worse, you are sorely mistaken. This isn't a slippery slope argument that I'm making either. This is just the realities of these things, that they will do, as history has shown, whatever they need to do to control and to maintain their power. And so if you don't agree with whatever the theme of is the day, you have to have your thumb up your butt and, wear a tinfoil hat all day or you're going to get coronavirus. Well, you're just not going to be able to buy or sell. So let's keep going.
Well, the problem is the system is subjective to whomever decides what ethical is. Though many people believe the ESG score is about climate change and the environment, the truth is the social and governance aspects of the score have just as much weight, sometimes even more, than a company's environmental impact. So the E obviously stands for environment. That's carbon footprint, pollution, and waste. The S stands for social, which judges things such as how well a company embraces social justice and how diverse a company is. The G stands for governance. Does the company embrace things like a diversity board and who is in charge? Those sound nice enough, except this is just a small list of what goes under each category, and the people deciding what is or isn't ethical, like in most Silicon Valley-based companies, are clearly liberal elites. For example, Tesla, a company that makes electric vehicles, has a moderate to moderately poor score. How can this be? Think whatever you want about Elon Musk. There's no doubt his car company has been a game changer for the environment.
Well, he has a high ESV score because low is better because he's not playing ball with everybody all the time. Now, a lot of people say, watch out for Elon because, he says he kowtows to China. I'm sorry, guys. If you're going to do business with China, you're going to have to probably say some things. So I'll give him that concession. I don't think that he's some sort of moral, arbiter or that's not the correct word, moral bastion. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that, don't judge the man harshly. Watch what he does. Because what people are expecting is he's going to do stuff like Bezos or Bill Gates has done. Where Bezos is in the Washington Post, owns the Washington Post, and, puts out all kinds of deceptive and crazy headlines. So, mind you, Jeff Bezos is not running the Washington Post directly, but I'm sure he does have some direction of where the paper goes if he wants, or he has somebody in charge who he likes how they run the paper. So, on the other hand, Elon, he's worried about certain principles of free speech. He's worried about certain things. I don't think he's just signaling here. It's just that he can't signal over in other nations. And that's an important thing to understand. I'm not saying that it makes him, moral either. I'm just saying that I don't know that he is evil because he is wealthy. Right?
Yet somehow, out of the 5 US-based automotive companies like Ford, which make gas-guzzling trucks, Tesla's ESG score is the worst. Why is that? Well, because it turns out what liberal elites think about Elon Musk seems to matter. The scoring system takes into account his eclectic personality, his tendency to tweet whatever he wants, his views on COVID, and his libertarian politics. Try to make sense of this. Lockheed Martin, a company that produces weapons bringing death and destruction upon the planet, has a higher social responsibility score than Tesla. Why is that? Sorry, I don't mean higher. They have a better social responsibility score. It's actually the lower the score, the better it is. So theirs is actually better than Tesla's. Well, it's because ESG scores are based on what neoliberal elites consider to be moral and good. It's good to supply weapons to our so-called friends. They use them to kill bad guys. Never mind the fact that they also kill children. But it's bad to criticize COVID lockdown policies. Never mind the fact you've arguably done more to advance a greener planet, make space travel cheaper, and bring internet to all than any government or organization on Earth. The score is political.
And it's not just that, but they don't, Elon's not controllable. Why would they back him? If he does whatever he wishes, right? They literally made him a board member so that he could not get more control over Twitter. Sign it in his contract. Well, we'll give you some say as long as you don't buy, more than 14.9%. You can't own 15%. That's too much control for you, Elon. So again, I'm not saying he's our savior or anything, but I'm saying that pay attention. Why aren't they liking and backing him? He's not part of this great reset as far as I can tell, unless you're going to say he's a shill. Unless he's basically just there to be controlled opposition, which, man, that's a pretty black-pilled response. You can't assume everybody is controlled opposition. There are certainly controlled oppositions out there. Fox News is primarily controlled opposition, folks. But just because that Fox News is primarily controlled opposition doesn't mean that someone like Tucker Carlson isn't, doing a good job and isn't exposing things. Now, there might be some things he's not allowed to talk about. I don't know. My point is that not everything is always so black and white when it comes to people. Imagine that. There are shades of gray when it comes to people's intent and motives sometimes. When I talk about these things and how that they are evil, I'm talking about on a bigger, grander, more global, universal, if you would, scale. And I don't have time to always parcel up everything and get into the minutia. But what we can say is that Elon's not going along with their plans exactly the way that they want, right? Like Disney is, like Oreo is, as Seth brought up on Man in America, like many other companies. They might as well be countries, folks, because they are autonomous governments. Don't deny that they aren't. And they make rules, even though the government does regulate them themselves. They write the laws and give it to the government to then be passed. That basically, again, provides them with power and closes off the market for their competition. This is how it works. It's called rent seeking.
So the company reigning at the very top of the ESG scoring list is, believe it or not, Bill Gates founded Microsoft. Are we surprised? So ESG scores determine how much and how easy it is for a company to secure funds and investments. So it's important to have a good score. The better the score, the greater the cash flow. It's why we're seeing companies go woke by regurgitating slogans like Black Lives Matter while hypocritically using prison labor. It's why companies refuse to do business with controversial people and businesses, like when Parler suddenly was dropped from Amazon and Apple. Perhaps it's why GoFundMe dropped the trucker convoy. Despite people thinking these companies make these moves out of some sort of moral signaling, the reality is that many companies don't want to harm their ability to attract investors.
So why was the trucker convoy dropped? Because somebody pressured them along the way. It might have been a payment processor. This is what happens all the time. No matter what, the principle is the same. If you do not worship what we worship, if you do not say what we say, then you are not allowed to buy or sell. There was something written down about that like 2,000 years ago. I don't remember where it was, but I remember somebody predicted that would happen.
They feel forced to make these sort of moves. But who's forcing them? Who's in control of these scores? The people deciding whether or not you are moral and good matters. And I think it's easy to see why this type of moral scoring system can be easily abused. One might think the system is a good idea, it just needs tweaking. But any sort of score that directly ties cash flow to morals and ethics is ripe for abuse. The scores can not only change on a whim based on what the latest woke fad is, but based on what benefits the people in charge. Do we really want neoliberal elites to have the power to compel a company to completely change its ethos in order to raise their scores?
A lot of people do. A lot of people think that that's good. Talk to your average citizen. You'll be surprised. You'll find that some people believe off the top of their head that, yeah, oh no, they're so smart. They're going to take care of me. It's better that they do that. And this is why tyranny reigns. Because regular, everyday people don't want to do the work. They don't want to be involved in being free. It takes responsibility to be free. If you want to live in a libertine society, guess what? You put tyrants over you so you can do whatever you would like. But see, You're not going to be in a libertine society. You might be able to have sex with whomever you want. You might be able to do whatever drugs you want. You might be able to play video games all day and be kind of lazy, but in some manner or another, they will be taxing you. They will be using you for labor or resource or whatever. Something will be taken from you, I promise, including your very soul.
This has massive implications for society. Companies are modifying their behavior to ingratiate themselves with those in power. They're changing their slogans and advertisements. They're censoring content. They're firing controversial people. Speak up, you might lose your job because you're bad for the company's ESG score. Here's another example. 10 years ago, Disney's ESG score was considered one of the worst. Now, with all the changes they've made to be more inclusive, such as the commitment to make half of all characters from the LGBTQI plus community, even though they represent only a fraction of the greater population, and made moves to rid themselves, such as right-winger Gina Carano, their score is one of the best. It's right up there with Microsoft. Though the scores haven't been used yet on individuals, we've seen some semblance of it already happening unofficially. It's what cancel culture is based on, but it's become more than just Twitter mobs coming after people. We've seen individuals banned from using social media and services like PayPal and GoFundMe refusing to send payouts to controversial people. They're not doing this because they're morally agreeing with it. They're doing it for their bottom line.
Yeah, that's what's going on here, guys. So we talk about the video I played initially. That's 100% what's going on. It's about the bottom line. So Bob Chapek from Disney didn't do that video because he actually cares about any of this stuff. He did it for his bottom line. Now, some of those other people maybe because they like being cool and whatever else. But if they say these things, whether they mean them or not, then they get the clout. And so this is actually one of the things that happened to Christianity in ancient Rome. Not talked about very often, but it is 100% what happened is people started becoming Christians and it became a popular and in thing to do. And so people would claim that they were Christians or join the church for the social status, not for the actual faith. And in this circumstance, the actual faith doesn't matter because it means to manipulate you and is used as a tool. And just like in the early Christian church, not the very early church, but about 400 to 500 years in, this was happening before then, but yeah, by that point, there were so many people in the empire who were Christians already and it was becoming very, very acceptable that it became advantageous as a politician. And what happened then? Well, the church marries the state. They become in bed with each other, and it is then used. The church becomes a political power unto itself, and it is used to again exercise political authority instead of spiritual and moral authority, which is not the same thing, folks. They do not have the same kind of consequences. So why would these people go about this other than their own power? Well, because they have an issue with authenticity. And I don't know about you, but I cannot stand fake, inauthentic people. Now, I'm very much me when I'm on here. Obviously, I do things. I try and speak in a manner that's not necessarily too quick or too sporadic. Sometimes I go off on tangents, right? All those things. So you're getting me. But I'm trying to talk in a way that's clear as well, where I'm enunciating my words and speaking properly so you can understand. So yes, there's some exaggeration on my end when I do my show, but it's not really that much. You are getting an authentic person. But these folks, they don't care about authenticity. It's part of the problem with wokeness to its core. And I'm going to show you right here is a clip from James Lindsay where he talks about this.
Is that it's scary. Finding authenticity is scary. And so it's easy to develop, especially I think maybe in a world where we're kind of, we live in cities, a lot of us, we're divorced from the land. You kind of hear these things when you read the postmodern literature and you really get the sense of this. It's difficult to find authenticity when you spend most of your time on the internet or watching television or living in a city, a so-called concrete jungle. Everything seems fake. Everything seems artificial. You're eating, packaged food or whatever. It seems very difficult to connect to the real.
Because you're living in the synthetic, and everything you're doing is synthetic. Everything you're ingesting is synthetic. Everything your mind takes in is synthetic. Every person you interact with is synthetic.
And it's very easy, therefore, to be drawn in to ideas that make you feel alienated from the real, and that philosophies like postmodernism that speak into that alienation and lead to kind of discontentment and this, I don't know, almost hipster-style detached irony from reality. And this is really what I want to try to answer, because authenticity is woke kryptonite. There are other things that are woke kryptonite as well. I don't know if kryptonite, I don't remember my Superman well enough to know if it comes in different colors or something like that, but they have more power, different effects on Superman. But like responsibility is a woke kryptonite. Maybe that's the red one or green one or whatever. And then authenticity is another huge woke kryptonite, though. The woke don't really have any power over people who are authentic. People who are genuinely authentic can resist most of the woke manipulations once they at least know a little bit about them.
And I mention this stuff all the time, right? And this is where the will to power comes in, because these folks are willing to be disingenuous in order to gain power, no matter what. And so they will groom, they will sell out their brother, sell him into slavery, their brother and sister, if they need to, in order to gain wealth, power, and prestige. So again, Lindsay's going to talk about this. I have a few other clips, guys, and we should be done by the top of the hour, I think, as long as we're on and keeping on track here. There's a couple articles and things I want to read to you as well, but as far as videos, this one, just a few more.
Because wokeness taps into that feeling of inauthenticity. Postmodernism taps into that feeling of inauthenticity. Neo-Marxism or critical theory taps into that feeling of inauthenticity, and they exploit that. So it's, when you hear like Marxists talking about bourgeois values, they're talking about this kind of failure of authenticity. The bourgeois for the French, before the French Revolution, before Marx didn't make up the term bourgeoisie. This was a term that was used in France to describe a kind of middleman class that was happening and kind of sucking up a lot of the money in pre-revolutionary France. And these values of the bourgeois are the ideas, again, that it's like fake high culture. It's people mimicking high culture in a very inauthentic way. They're not really of high culture, but they're acting like high culture. They're the Kardashians or whatever, they're dressing like they're glamorous, but they're actually not glamorous. And this lack of authenticity is something that all of these lines of thought have spoken into. So finding authenticity is really a big theme that I want to try to communicate, but it's a very difficult thing. I'll talk more about what I think it takes to find authenticity near the end of the podcast. For the moment, I'll just point out that authenticity is scary. It's
right. And I often talk about this concept from a Jungian perspective because I'm very well versed in Carl Jung stuff. I have, come across Jung, I don't know, 15 some odd years ago. And actually his works, a lot of his stuff when I've been in harder places have helped me out, at least before I was really committed to Christ. So what I can tell you is that the Jungian perspective is that your persona, you're wearing a mask and you're not really a developed individual. And therefore, because you're not a developed individual and you haven't developed yourself deeply, you haven't thought about who you are, what you're really about, what your principles are, why you believe in what you believe in, and challenge those. And so then prove them to yourself. Because you've done none of that, you can only project the desires that you aren't even aware of from inside outward onto other people. And you can only put on this mask, this persona that is placed upon you by the world, that is by society, the way people see you, right? Like, have any of you ever felt like, maybe when you were younger, especially, you've been in a situation where someone is someone is putting a personality onto you, attributing aspects of your personality that isn't you. There's a difference if like you have 20 people doing that and you know them very well, because that's you not being honest with yourself. But I mean, just some random person or some person you don't know really well. Well, what that is that's that individual who doesn't care to really know you and sees an aspect of you that bugs them, that is inside of them generally, and then they project it. And then they make that your whole entire identity, right? So that's what this is about. And so to be authentic to oneself has to challenge who you are to its very core. And you have to understand you're evil. You have to understand how terrible you actually are, because you are a terrible person. You're a good person too, probably, if you have the capacity to express that. A lot of people never get out of the way, though, of the things that choke them, right, in the cares of the world, as the parable of the sower would put it.
It's very scary for people to be authentic. It's very, very scary. And the reason is simple. When you're authentic, the thing you're putting on the line is your real self. If you're being inauthentic and people don't like you, or people say something about your work, or they say something about how you behaved or whatever, you know that it was a projected image of yourself, an avatar of yourself that you put out there that people didn't like, and the real you that you identify as inside remains protected.
So he just took this from a different perspective, right? Basically, I was talking about the other. He's saying about yourself, right? That's not really you. So you're protected. I think this is part of it. I think that this goes a lot deeper than what Lindsay scratches at here. But I want you to think of this idea. Really gather this in your mind and understand what we are living in.
This is, in its extremity, or its most extreme expression, a personality disorder called schizoid personality disorder. That's actually where this cleavage between the real self and the authentic self happens extremely profoundly, usually in childhood, 8 or 9 years old, at which point the real self withdraws and you psychologically produce a projected external self that interacts with the world but is false. And so in schizoid personality disorder, the problem is that your true inner self never matures emotionally, because you've isolated it or insulated it from the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as has been said. And so it never grows, it never matures. And so you're still childlike inside. You have a very childlike conception of the world and how it should work.
Now, I want you to remember when I played the Friday Night Tights, that's on the Neurotic channel, guys. When Jeremy was talking about this, about how they talk to you like your children, how Kamala Harris goes, Ukraine is a country and Russia's a bigger country. And because Russia's a bigger country, it invaded Ukraine, and that's bad, children. Think about that.
You project yourself into these, you tell yourself stories, you could write novels in your own head, you have false conversations that don't really exist with people, you reimagine every social interaction, or you pregame your social interactions in your head, and it's very distressing when they don't go the way that they're supposed to go, and ultimately it is the result of a gigantic protective mechanism for your real self. It is
and this is also why people, they have problems maybe dating or making friends or whatever, because they're too worried about being cool and being, the hip guy or girl, or doing the right thing, or doing the thing that no one, that everyone will approve of, and not making the faux pas. And yet, when you do that, everyone picks up on it and everyone hates it. They despise you, and you despise yourself. So it really is a psychopathology, right? But it is what people do. And then they find the right kind of people, and they're like, oh, you're a gross person who's not developed at all too. Me too. Let's be friends and be gross together. That's what goes on, right? And then you have an ally all of a sudden. It's not just you alone in the world. Yeah. You'll find if you're your authentic self, you'll get along a lot better. One of the things when I dated a lot that I learned real quick is have no expectations about my date. And when I did not have expectations, they always went well. I was always there to have fun. for me, I always went out to, if I took a girl out to a restaurant, which was the majority of the time, right? I picked a restaurant I knew I was going to enjoy the food at. Didn't matter if she was a horrible person or not. I was going to have a good time. That is a mindset that will give you power and control over your life, folks. You know, and it worked. It works well because it's like, I'm not worried about catering to her in all the little things. Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing that wrong? Like, she likes me or she doesn't like me. And I can tell you with women, it's, if you're a man, it's more likely that if you are authentic to yourself and you own it, she's going to like you. Women pick up on this all of the time. It's why, it's why all the soy boy beta, cucks that are out there trying to get girls and all that have been compared to the cuttlefish, the sneakers, right? They're not being authentic. They're just doing it because they think that's what the girls want to hear. And then if you actually see those people, those girls who are on the left, be authentic, they like guys who are, well, they're traditional and on the right, masculine. But can't have that because, that would be a healthy society with a good functioning morality. And that we just can't do that. We have to atomize everybody and destroy the foundations of this world.
Literally a personality disorder level of projecting an inauthentic self or set of inauthentic selves so that you don't have to confront reality as you really are and thus bear the pain.
Yes, bearing the pain. And here's an example of someone bearing the pain. I believe this is from Memology 101. So Taylor Lorenz is a journalist with a long history of ruining people's lives. She has falsely accused individuals of using slurs. New York Times says Taylor Lorenz says she regrets error of claiming entrepreneur used racial slur, I guess, or R slur. I don't know. And even tried to cancel Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast. I told you we'd talk about Mr. Beast. Now, I'm subbed to Mr. Beast, not because I watch him, but because that dude is awesome. I mean, when you get a YouTube channel, you're doing well, and like you're like, oh, my thing's going to be, I'm going to give people money. I'm just going to give money away. I'm like, okay, I can back this dude. And now I guess his channel's a whole game show and whatever else now. So cool. But yeah, what has Mr. Beast done that is so terrible? But she's going after him, just like they went after PewDiePie. YouTube's biggest philanthropist has a history of homophobic comments, as Taylor Lorenz. So here's the meat and potatoes. Taylor Lorenz, a horrible person who does nothing but virtue signal and goes after people in order to bolster up her own career in the synthetic world with the synthetic taglines and the synthetic narratives, is about to show you a synthetic performance. You'll see.
Had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad. You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating. And terrifying. It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard. It's horrifying. I'm so sorry. It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
All right, guys. But there you go. There's that inauthentic person, right? And when I was younger, man, inauthenticity used to drive me so nuts that I didn't even like to small talk with people because I felt inauthentic doing it. I've gotten over that as I've gotten older, but it really was a challenge for me. Because I was like, why am I going to talk about this nonsense stuff? And a lot of that was just life and experience and getting to know people and understanding people better. And how I could be a better person to the world. But with that, there's a thing in Marxism that generally suggests that well, they're just not good people. That they are the Marxians in whatever iteration, whatever form it is. They're just terrible people. They're morally bereft and truly the sons of the devil himself, Marx. So here from Short Fat Utaku, old Dev, I clipped some things because I thought Dev did a really good video earlier this week. I can't remember the name of it, but just go over to his channel, guys. Watch his stuff. Give him a sub. Any of these people I've mentioned, are folks I'm, ingesting normally. So please, if you like what they have to say, go do the same. Bolster up their channels. Of course, they all have bigger channels than mine, so don't forget to share mine out too. In any case, let's play this clip.
Examine this idea that the radical left is rebelling against God for the crime of being. We can take.
So they're rebelling against God for the crime of being. And why? Why are they doing this? Well, because they don't know how to be themselves. Right? And we're going to go through this. Dev's going to talk about some points here, and I'll be pausing any of my commentary here and there, right?
God out of it, frankly. The analysis is the same. There's multiple levels to go down until we reach the bottom, so let's start digging. Level 1, where the socialist is simply self-interested.
You call it selling out your principles, I call it fucking winning. And that's my principle. To win as a socialist, not to lose as a socialist. That's not my principle. I don't give a fuck about principled failure. Principled failure is worth dog shit.
Oh, have I used that clip too much recently? Okay, how about this one instead?
I don't think there's anything wrong with an individual maximizing their outcomes within an unethical system like capitalism, especially if they're a socialist, because it increases the likelihood that they'll be able to achieve political and economic power.
It's not hard to find some conservative YouTube channel, like Crowder's Change My Mind thing or Campus Reform, where the host interviews some dipshit university students and gets them to admit the most basic hypocrisies about their socialist ideals. The example on screen is about a GPA redistribution, where the left-leaning students are asked why shouldn't we equalize the GPA of high-achieving students with low-achieving ones. The students all give the same reply, because the low-achieving ones didn't work as hard as they did. When confronted with the very real possibility that high earners and low earners in society function the same way, making income redistribution just as offensive as GPA distribution is, almost all of their brains shut down. This is a funny gotcha moment, sure, but it serves to show that a lot of young socialists are either idiots who haven't thought enough about their ideas, or they're entirely unprincipled and simply looking to do what benefits them.
And as he showed Lord Voldemort there, that's exactly what I always say, might makes right. But see, I understand what their philosophy is. They don't. They don't understand their moral underpinnings. And I do. And this is a common argument from the right, that we understand the left and they don't understand us. The big difference is I'm not saying that they're moral people who are mistaken. No, they're evil. Not every single one of them, though. I won't say all of them. I think a lot of them have been deceived. But despite that deception, they do not seek the truth. So the retribution in which they receive, that is, the cosmic retribution, that is their fault still. They didn't decide to seek the truth. And I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why people just take things as a given. We take all kinds of things as a given, don't we? Maybe because it's easier to operate that way. But frankly, when you get lied to again and again, and you see the lies and you see them exposed, and then you make excuses why it actually wasn't a lie that was being exposed there, well, that's someone who's not trying to be honest. That's a disingenuous actor. And as Voldemort just said, he doesn't care about keeping principles and losing. He only cares about winning. Might makes right.
Distribution when they're on the bottom, rugged individualism when they're on the top. Frankly, it's probably a bit of both. Level 2, where the socialist directly sides with a foreign evil, because at least it is not the familiar.
During the Vietnam War, we were actually the very first party in the U.S. To stage a demonstration against the Vietnam War in like 1968, when most people just kind of thought the war was whatever, you know, there wasn't a massive anti-war movement. And I think, you know, obviously the Vietnamese people themselves fought a heroic battle and gained their liberation from U.S. imperialism.
It's not hard to find people on the left who worship the genocidal totalitarian regimes of Lenin.
You know, we got Vietnam from the French, right?
Stalin, and Mao. And I don't just mean the overt tankies, though obviously them. Even the bread tubers, the so-called libertarian socialists. While they might criticize the Soviet regime from time to time, especially during a debate with a non-socialist, where they know that an audience outside of their own insular crowd might be watching, catch them talking on their own, to their own communities, and you'll likely hear some variant of, well, socialist regimes around the world were sabotaged by capitalists who refused to trade with them. Because I guess socialism requires an outside capitalist society to keep.
Yes, it does. Otherwise, you don't know the value of money. It absolutely does. You know how the USSR priced its money? It looked at what we priced priced its products. It looked at what we did here in the US to price products, and then they said, well, we're going to undercut that. They needed to understand the value of it, though. It's pretty simple, guys. That's what markets provide. They're an organic form of basically sorting out what the value of something is.
Trading with them, if it's gonna work. Modern socialist apologia ranges from the Holodomor was an accident, not a genocide, to the kulaks deserved it for resisting collectivization, actually, to the exceptionally grotesque, the Communist Party of Peru did not boil children alive, but they did occasionally use scalding water as a method of execution, which has to be the craziest commie simping I've seen yet. I made a video detailing this general idea in the past, revolving around this quote of Aristotle's. It is the mark of a tyrant to have men of foreign extraction rather than citizens as guests at table and companions, feeling that citizens are hostile, but strangers make no claim against him. I probably didn't do that video concept proper justice back then, but hey, we all get better over time. And while before I used the example of leftists loving immigrants as oddities from a foreign land, while hating their own countrymen, I'll look at it from a different angle this time. Have you ever noticed that if you happen to know a couple where one partner is secretly abusive of the other, when you think about your interactions with them, you will begin to notice a pattern? More specifically, that the abusive person while at a social event with their partner is not only quick to brush off their partner's complaints, but also gracious with outsiders and heavily invested in keeping the peace. There's a limit to this, of course. There are extraordinary stories where the abuser snaps publicly, but you know what I mean. There's two reasons for this. One, it's because the abusive dynamic is a product of the relationship, and the abuser feels that outsiders should not be privy to it. Two, it's because the outsiders do not know the abuser in that way, and so they cannot peer into the darker parts of his soul. This is all just guesswork by me, but that idea maps onto Aristotle's view of tyrants well, and it also maps onto the socialist who is willing to support the evil other over his own familiar homeland. Level 3, where the socialist directly sides with domestic evil.
Now, Dev gives 5 points in total, but I only clipped this part for 3 points. There's another video I want to show you. He talks about Marx's relationship with his family. I could have brought it up, but and instead of just saying, well, you know, I mean, I've talked about this stuff before, but instead of doing it and then him and I having similar videos, I'll just give him credit, let him do it. He's very he's a very eloquent, proficient speaker. So of course he does edited videos too. I'm sure that helps.
Because a socialist revolution must come from the margins of society.
What happened was the intellectual communists were sent out in cadres out into these little towns to find people who would help them round up the kulaks. So imagine you're in a town and there's 3 or 4 people or maybe 10 people or something like that who are a little more successful than everyone else. There's going to be some people who are not happy about it at all, that are going to be very resentful about that and jealous. And so when the intellectuals came in and described the reason that these people should be treated as parasites and profiteers, then it was the resentful minority in those towns, and that would be the kind of guy that hangs around in the bar all the time and is completely unconscientious and fails at everything and then blames everyone else for it. The intellectuals came in and said,
have you ever met that guy? Maybe you haven't. I have a history of hanging around bars and, you know, I worked in a jail and whatever else. I've met thousands of those people. Complete losers who never take responsibility for themselves, who never pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Mind you, sometimes you need help getting pulled up. I'm all about giving you a hand up, but you have to do the work. You have to do the work. And in jails and prisons, they have programs to help people out, to do the work, to get them corrected. And you'd be surprised what recidivism is. They come back through and they'll make excuses. I remember there was a article in the paper talking about one of our success stories at our jail of recidivism. What they didn't tell you is the guy who went through the program had gone through it. This was his 10th time going through the program. And they were like, oh, see, he hasn't been locked up for 3 years. And a year after the article was released, or maybe even lesser time, he was locked up again and several times. So, yeah, he didn't want to change. That's what that came down to. You can't make someone change if they don't want to change. This is why you do not cast your pearls before swine, folks.
Said, this is unfair that this happened to you. You've actually been victimized, and now it's your opportunity to go have your revenge.
It's not hard to find people who are cruel for the sake of being cruel, and who have told themselves that it's because their politics are good and their targets are bad that justifies that cruelty. This makes the cruelty moral, and I say that word moral with heavy air quotes. This ranges from people playing cover for thieves, looters, and shoplifters, saying shit like, don't snitch on a thief stealing from a corporation, you didn't see nothing, or idiotically calling people racist for noticing the California ransacking problem, to people playing cover for rioters and arsonists who destroy people's businesses and livelihoods by saying, oh, that's what insurance is for, lol. At least that's what they said during the George Floyd riots. Now that it's a gay bar getting arsoned instead, people are screaming about how insurance isn't enough.
Because of repressive tolerance, that whole thing we spoke of last week, and something I'm going to continue to bring up because it should be in your vocabulary. They are allowed to do this to you. You're not allowed to do this to them.
It's funny how that fucking works. To people openly advocating for the death of their political opponents and the targets of their ire, and in some cases actually killing them. Again, viewing your enemies as ontologically evil.
Yeah, well, Auntie, I spent a good amount of time getting this together yesterday, cutting clips, but I appreciate it, brother. So yeah, these people, as Dev just finished up there, see you as ontologically evil, and you should see them that way, actually, because they actually are. They actually are. You'll give someone the benefit of the doubt. You'll say, oh, well, maybe they're just having a bad day today, right? You'll make excuses for these people because you don't want to acknowledge that they are in power and are holy and truly evil and wish to come after you and destroy you. Now, I'm not trying to make it an us versus them kind of thing. They did this on the left, and I'm perfectly fine being left alone, but they want to keep coming after us, and they want to come after your children. They want to groom your children like the wicked bastards they are. And on top of that, they have the will to power, the will that you do not have, because you don't have the will to stand up against them. Now, some of you say, well, I have a job, I have kids, I have this, I have that. Well, I have all of those things too, and I don't care. I will learn to survive, and I will make sure that my kids are not touched by this evil. And that's because in my faith, children are what I'm supposed to be emulating toward my Father, God. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm going to play one more clip about this and the ontological other. And we're going to look at their father. Their true father is Satan himself. But we're going to look at their spiritual father, Karl Marx.
I have no examples to put on screen this time. I have met and seen many depressed leftists say things like widespread mental health problems are caused by capitalism, and I never asked to be born, I hate that I have to work to eat. These are the laws of nature. You will always have to work to live, regardless of social change. Mental health problems are not caused by capitalism, but by your own cynicism about your inability to achieve the perfection you're addicted to. This attitude is the hatred of being itself. And all of this shit is endemic to socialism. Karl Marx himself would be right at home beside the blue-haired, plaid-wearing, verified Twitter hipster who hates his job and hates his parents and hates his life. We all know one of the more famous Marx quotes, "Religion is the opium of the masses." Here's the full quote. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is to demand for their real happiness. To call on them to give up their illusions about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. The criticism of religion is, therefore, in embryo, the criticism of that veil of tears of which religion is the halo. Criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers on the chain, not in order that man shall continue to bear that chain without fantasy or consolation, but so that he shall throw off the chain and pluck the living flower. Criticism.
Make sure I'm not muted there. So Marx is, rambling on about religion and why it's a problem and yada da 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 da. I don't disagree that mass organized, politicized religion is used to manipulate people. But Marx believed that it was what cut people off from their true potential and cut society off from its true potential. And in this flagrant statement about religion and what he believed about religion, he creates his own. Because no matter how you want to dismiss it, you are all religious people. You all have a faith, whether you believe it or not. And either, we who worship a higher power, believe in a higher power, you're either one of us, or you're someone who believes in the state. Maybe you don't believe in the state overtly, but maybe you believe in, everyone's just generally a good person and that kind of thing. You have some sort of faith belief system that gets you through life. You would not be able to operate otherwise. I can promise you that, because we're not just beings that are experiencing emotions and thoughts and whatever else. We're far more complicated than that. We need spiritual guidance. That spirit, as I often say, is something akin to what we call an attitude today. We need to be lifted up and brought up, and we need to be energized to do things, right? We cannot just go about our lives and continually see the sadness of life and the entropy occurring and continue on. There has to be more. And that's not wishful thinking, it's the kind of thing. That's just for me, it's not a wishful thinking at all. I mean, I more or less would say I know what I believe to be true. And, I can't prove it 100%. I can prove a lot of things, though. So that's the more or less part. But, I've seen what people without faith and religion are reduced to. And what they do when they put their faith into something that is sinister, right? And the nature of humanity and how sinister it can be towards each other.
Of religion disillusions man, so that he will think, act, and fashion his reality like a man who has discarded his illusions and regained his senses, so that he will move around himself as his own true son. These are the words of a man who is eternally at war with reality itself. This is the cry of rage at his inability to reach perfection. To really hammer the point home, I want to show you some letters to Karl Marx from Heinrich Marx, his father. Dear old dad's words about his son give us some insight into what kind of man.
Yeah, so religion creates a constraint which, in his mind, minimizes a person's full potential, like his religion does, of course.
Marx was. Frankly speaking, my dear Karl, I do not like this modern world, which all weaklings use to cloak their feelings when they quarrel with the world because they do not possess, without labor or trouble, well-furnished palaces with vast sums of money and elegant carriages. This embitterment disgusts me, and you are the last person from whom I would expect it. What grounds can you have for it? Has not everything smiled on you ever since your cradle? Has not nature endowed you with magnificent talents? Have your parents not lavished affection on you? Have you ever up to now been unable to satisfy your reasonable wishes? And have you not carried away in the most incomprehensible fashion the heart of a girl whom thousands envy you? Yet the first untoward event, the first disappointed wish, invokes embitterment. Is that strength? Is that a manly character?
No, it's not. Karl Marx was a child. He was a gross person, man. He just an absolutely awful human being. And his father's like, your wife is a lovely person. Many men are jealous that you have her. Marx treated her like a dog his entire life. This is a sad, sad individual that has captured the minds and hearts of the millions of other sad individuals out there. And they are stuck in his false faith of destruction.
This criticism isn't a one-off either. On several occasions, we were without a letter for months, and the last time when you knew Edward was ill, mother suffering, and I myself not well, and moreover cholera was raging in Berlin, and as if that did not even call for an apology, your next letter contained not a single word about it, but merely some badly written lines and an extract from the diary entitled The Visit, which I would quite frankly prefer to throw out rather than accept. A crazy botch work which merely testifies how you squander your talents and spend your nights giving birth to monsters. That you follow in the footsteps of the new immoralists, who twist their words until they themselves do not hear them, who christen a flood of words a product of genius because it is devoid of ideas or contains only distorted ideas. As if we were men of wealth, my son disposed in 1 year of almost 700 tailors, contrary to all agreement, contrary to all usage, whereas the richest spend less than 500. And why? I do him the justice of saying that he is no rake, no squanderer, but how can a man who every week or two discovers a new system and has to tear up old works laboriously arrived at, how can he, I ask, worry about trifles?
So he said every week or two he comes up with a new system and destroys it, tears it down, whatever. Yeah, again, not a very fruitful person, right? To use biblical language. But I mean fruitful even in their in industrious endeavors, making money, right? I think his wife wrote toward the end of his life or her life or something, if he would have just spent all of his time making capital instead of writing about it.
How can he submit to the pettiness of order? Everyone dips a hand in his pocket, and everyone cheats him, so long as he doesn't disturb him in his studies. And a new money order is soon written again, of course. I must add, too, the complaints of your brothers and sisters. From your letters, one can hardly see that you have any brothers or sisters. As for the good Sophie, who has suffered so much for you, and Jenny is so lavish in her devotion to you, you do not think of her when you do not need her. I have paid your money order for 160 tailors. I cannot or can hardly charge it to the old academic year, for that truly has its full due. And for the future, I do not want to expect many of the same kind. Oh, by the way, that request from Marx to stop spending so much money went unheeded, as we can tell from a third letter. I am referring to the paltry matter of money, the value of which for the father of a family you still do not seem to recognize, but I do all the more, and I do not deny that at times.
Marx's father is saying, you don't seem to understand as a father yourself the value of money.
Times I reproach myself with having left you all too loose a rein in this respect. Thus we are now in the 4th month of the law year, and you have already drawn at 280 tailors. I have not yet earned that much this winter. I'm sorry for that gigantic block of text, but I really wanted to hammer the point home. Marx was considered to be brilliant, but also depressive, manipulative, potentially even sociopathic. He treated his parents like a bank account. He only considered his family insofar as he could use them. His father was dismayed at who Marx was becoming, despite his talents and his upbringing. And as an adult, Marx went to war with being itself, and every other socialist follows in his footsteps.
100% right, Dev. And so with that, before I get out of here, guys, I want to leave you with a few things from Isaiah, the scriptures 5, 18 through 21. Woe to those who draw iniquity with cords of vanity and sin as if with a cart of rope, that say, let him make speed and hasten his work, that we may see it. And let the counsel of the holy ones of Israel draw near and come, that we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Seems exactly like every Marxist I've ever met. Now, we do have this. I pulled this up earlier by mistake. It just was slightly out of order there. But 2021 sees a record number of bills targeting trans youth. What? It's not targeting trans youth. It's targeting the grooming. Republicans in at least 25 states have introduced over 60 bills targeting grooming. Legislative boom since January that has beaten 2020's total number of anti-trans bills. Okay. Why it matters. The LGBTQ advocates say that the unprecedented push was catalyzed by backlash to Biden's election and the Supreme Court ruling that workers cannot be fired for being gay or transgender. No. It's because you're grooming children. freaking sickos. And of course, I thought about adding it in the show. The New York Times put a article out talking about furries trying to obfuscate the whole thing. Why are these Republicans in the state houses talking about furries? No, they're talking about the grooming. And that might be a part of it, but they're concerned with grooming. Christopher Rufo says, we are building a new model of conservative activism, waging sophisticated narrative war, mobilizing grassroots, parent-driven protest, designing robust policies to change incentives and support strong leaders who will stand with families against nihilistic elites. And we need this to happen. Thank God for someone like Christopher Rufo. And this has been a problem on the right for a long time. We don't have good tactics. And when we do organize, we tend to do it in a way that gets us in trouble, which I think is stupid. We can go about things a lot better. It says in 2014, the nonpartisan GAO published a 72-page report warning about child predators in public schools, recommending that administrators monitor teachers for grooming behaviors that could lead to sexual misconduct and sexual abuse. This is from the federal government itself. And yet we just are allowing it in. It was out there. It was a warning. No one heard about it, though. And here, I'm not going to have time to go over, but if you want to hear about how grooming actually works, right here from Molly Hemingway, amazing article here by Keely Thriller. I spent the first 10 years of my life being groomed by a pedophile. I am intimately familiar with the tactics and methods, all of which are brazenly present in much of today's curriculum. So that's in the Federalist. Yes, David French public schools are absolutely grooming children. There is a war on, folks. We are fighting back. There is steam gaining. I'm not telling you to get all white-pilled either. I'm telling you to be prepared, to understand, get your children out of the schools and out of the hands of these psychopaths. I think I'm going to leave you with this. From Matthew 18, this is verses 1 through 14. At the time the disciples came to Jesus, saying, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? It's a question they asked often of him, wanting to know how they could be close to him, holier, whatever, how they could be great men. And Jesus's answers surprised them, really. He says, then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, assuredly, I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Who receives one little child like this in my name receives me. And the point is not just that children are innocent, but they are mimickers and blind followers, and they seek to please. And if you don't know that, then you don't know any children. Or if you do see children who don't do that, you've met children whose parents have not socialized them well and have psychopathologized them. And that all occurs by the age of 4 or 4.5, 5. Go read the literature on it. That's how it works. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to the man by whom the offenses comes. And he goes on to talk about his hand or foot, cast it into the, cast it off from you, cut it off if it causes you to sin. But his point here is spiritual, but he's using a real world example, as Christ always does. He's saying, don't harm these children, or it would be better for you to have drowned yourself. And you have to understand the metaphysic of that too, because in the ancient world, the sea was a really scary, scary place. It was a place for the dead. And he talks about the parable of the lost sheep in that chapter as well. But for the sake of time, I think you got the point there, right? It is not cool to go after children. I know, believe it or not, right? It's evil. It's just flat out evil. But the thing is that you do not have the will to power to make it stop. You don't. And I don't mean going out and doing something crazy and hurting anybody. I mean, you won't draw your kids out of school. You won't take a lesser paying job. You won't move to a smaller house so that you can take a lesser paying job for the sake of your children, because you are more worried about you. And that, my friends, is sad, and it's evil, and shame on you. All right, guys, that's all I got. Yeah, just wanted to check on the chat real quick. All right. So, guys, thanks for being here. If you didn't catch the beginning, go back and watch the show. I didn't stream Friday because I was a little under the weather, but I don't think I'm going to try and stream this week until next Sunday. And what I will do, I think, is I'm going to start clipping these longer streams to smaller tidbits to release throughout the week, so that I'm a little bit more accessible, perhaps, instead of sitting down and trying to watch a 2-hour long stream. So I'll have both. And if you guys want to watch live, then watch live. And if not, watch the clip later. But that's going to be the plan for the week for right now with work. And I want to really start working on my book again, because it's been a while. And I really do want to get through it. I want to get it done. I don't want it to be Das Kapital and come out 15 years after I started doing it. Right. So with that, guys, I appreciate it. I'll be here next Sunday, probably around the same time, probably around 1 p.m. Eastern next week. Well, maybe not. Next Sunday's Passover Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. That is. I might not. I might be at church. We'll see. I didn't go to church today either. So, but thank you all for watching. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.